I caught my unfaithful wife in the arms of a famous former athlete while I was taking care of our daughters. After losing her lover, she now lives alone between grief and guilt. The night everything fell apart, I just wanted to relax. I sat on the sofa with my laptop, beer in hand, and started watching some random videos on YouTube. One of them appeared as a suggestion: Thai blast at the Bamboo Club in Tampa. Hot night. The thumbnail was dark, but something in that female silhouette caught my attention. I opened the video more out of curiosity than anything else. The loud sound, the flashing lights, and then her. It was Grace, dancing like she never danced with me. And what is worse, I saw a guy I recognized immediately. The recording was less than 3 hours old, and the date was that same night. I froze. I watched the video again about 10 times just to be sure, but there was no mistake. The green dress she said she would wear to the marketing conference. Her hair pulled back as she liked it when she wanted to look more professional. Everything there, in HD, with thousands of views and comments that increased every minute. When I saw the two of them kissing at the end of the video, my stomach turned. I was completely in shock, as if life had tripped me. My heart was beating in my ear. My wife was in another state, but not at a conference. I tried to call her immediately with trembling hands. 1, 2, 3 times. Nothing. I sent a message: call me. No response. Then I thought of Teo, her colleague, whom I knew from work. I called directly, without even thinking twice. He answered awkwardly, as if he already knew the reason for the call. I said directly, "Is she with Ty?" Silence. After a few eternal seconds, he blurted out, "They have been going out every night since they arrived." I hung up without saying anything else. There I knew that everything was over. I returned to the room and looked at our picture frame. Our photos in college, the wedding on the beach, the little twins with toothless smiles. It all seemed like a lie. Now, every memory seemed to mock me to my face. The feeling was not just anger or sadness. It was a physical, mental, and emotional betrayal. She lied looking me in the eyes before traveling, gave me a farewell kiss, and told me, "Take care of the girls." And now I was the last to know that she was mingling with an ex-NBA player in Tampa? What kind of person does this? I went to the front door and changed the code on the digital keypad. It was impulsive, but I did not care. I needed a minimum of control over what was left of my life. Then I went down to the basement and started moving her things there: bags, clothes, shoes, and even makeup. Every object was a reminder of the lie. I threw everything in as it was. The plan was simple. She would never cross that door again. If she wanted to live like a single woman, then stay away. The basement was all she would have until she decided what to do legally. The next day, the video already had millions of views. It was on all the networks. Even my boss mentioned it to me, thinking I already knew. It was impossible to hide. My parents called me confused and asked if everything was okay. My neighbors started to look with a mixture of pity and curiosity. I felt exposed like never before. She did not just cheat on me as a husband. She ridiculed me as a man, father, and human being. The betrayal went viral, and, with it, my world became a public joke. And that was only the first night of hell. After that night, everything reached a critical point. I spent hours staring at the ceiling, sleepless. Deep down, there was still a small part of me that wanted to believe that it was a misunderstanding, that maybe the video was old or part of some stupid game. But Grace's silence spoke more than any explanation. When the sun began to rise, I realized that I needed to act before she returned, trying to reverse the situation. My pride was crushed, but my dignity was still breathing. I got out of bed, looked at my reflection in the mirror, and told myself, "She will never set foot in here again." I called a storage company and reserved a container. I called a trusted friend and asked for help. He arrived without asking questions. We packed her things as if it were a military operation, cold, efficient, and without pause. Clothes, shoes, cosmetics, books, everything was put into boxes and taken away. The only thing I left at home were the girls' belongings. At that moment, Chloe and Riley still did not know anything. They only knew their mother was on a trip. But I knew this charade would not last long. The world was already talking about our life. In the afternoon, I received a message from her: "We can talk when I get back." It was the only thing she wrote. I took a deep breath and replied, "Your things are in the basement. The house now has a new code. Stay at the hotel." After that, nothing. Total silence. No justification, no apology, not even a real attempt to deny it. I stood there, looking at the cell phone screen, maybe hoping for another lie or maybe even a plea, but no. She accepted it as if she knew she had done too much to try to reverse it, and that confirmed everything for me. That night, I slept in the girls' room, between the two of them. I wanted to feel them close, to protect them, as if I could shield them from what was happening. While they slept, I stayed awake, remembering the time when everything seemed perfect. The Sunday lunches, the family trips, the impromptu Friday night dinners. It all seemed so far away now. My mind began to go over every moment with Grace during the last few months. All the signs were there. I just did not want to see them. The coldness, the excuses, the excess of conferences. And now I was the idiot who took care of the house while she had fun. The next day, her parents called me. They were shocked by what had happened and wanted to talk. I just told her she could go live with them or with whoever she wanted, as long as she was far from my house. Her mother cried on the phone, asking me to calm down, to think about the girls. I was direct. I am thinking about them. That is why I do not want her around. Grace's betrayal was not just about me. It was a bomb that she dropped in the middle of our family, and now I had to pick up the pieces alone. It was also on that day that I decided to look for a lawyer. I wanted to know my rights, to understand how the separation, the custody, everything would work. Although a part of me wanted to scream, to confront her in person, I knew I had to be rational. If I lost control, she could use it against me. The exposure we faced with the viral video was enough. Now it was about protecting what was left, my daughters, my sanity, my home. Grace was no longer part of that nucleus. She chose to leave when she decided to trade 16 years of marriage for 4 nights with a failed ex-athlete. It is strange how the mind works when you have been through a betrayal like that. Instead of erasing everything, it forces you to remember the best moments, as if it wanted to mock your pain. It was like that for me. During the following days, while looking at her boxes in the basement, I remembered how it all began. Grace and I met at the University of Chicago when we were 21. We took an advanced statistics course and sat next to each other. It was not love at first sight, but it was comfortable. We laughed at the professor's inside jokes and helped each other with the exams. The friendship grew quickly. Soon, we were going to cafes together, having lunch on campus, and studying late in the library. Things flowed so naturally that I do not even remember when it became a relationship. One day we were sharing headphones, listening to Coldplay. The next, we were kissing on the stairs of the same building. It was light. It was beautiful. In our senior year, we moved into a small apartment with more courage than money. We shared everything: bills, chores, and even dreams. When we graduated, we decided to get married. Nobody thought it would work so soon, but we swore we would prove them wrong. And for a long time, we did. We moved to Durham, North Carolina, thanks to a job offer of mine. Grace got a position at a marketing agency shortly after. We built our first house with sacrifice, even paying for the sofa in installments. And then the twins came, Chloe and Riley, when we were just 23. I remember the moment I heard them both cry in the hospital. Grace was crying with joy, and I was crying with pure panic and love at the same time. I was too young to be a father, but I was willing to try. We grew up together. Every sleepless morning was shared. Every lean time, every victory. Everything was ours. The first years with the girls were tough. Diapers, fevers, sleepless nights, and accumulating bills. But they were also the happiest years of my life. Grace has always been a present, loving, and creative mother. We supported each other as a team. We did not have luxuries, but we had love and, at that time, it seemed enough. I remember lying on the living room floor with the girls on my lap and Grace laughing while taking pictures. Everything seemed right. Even the fights, when they happened, ended in conversations and hugs. It never crossed my mind that everything could fall apart so easily. But looking back, maybe that was the problem, the ease. We became so comfortable with each other that we stopped trying. The kisses became rarer. The I love yous became routine. We started to live automatically. Work, school, supermarket, Netflix, sleep. When she said she felt a lack of excitement, I thought it was just tiredness. I did not realize she was drifting away from me. She never spoke clearly either. She just drifted away. And now, understanding it all, it hurts even more to know that that college love has become just a memory. And a memory does not hold a family together. These memories, which should be the foundation of our lives, are now just ghosts. I find myself remembering her smell, the way she snored softly, or the way she used to twist her hair when she was thinking. All of this became a thing of the past. I truly believed we had something unbreakable, that we were different, that young love would survive any crisis. But it did not survive a trip, a reunion, and everything turned to dust. And what torments me the most is that maybe she had already given up a long time ago and just did not have the courage to tell me before I found out on my own. What terrified me the most after the betrayal was telling the girls everything. Chloe and Riley were 14, and, although they were mature for their age, they were still just teenagers trying to understand the world. At first, I tried to keep the video away from them. I blocked social media, avoided conversations, but there was no way. Someone at school showed it to Chloe on the second day. She came home with her cell phone in her hand, her eyes red and her voice trembling. "Is the one in the video, Mom?" No, I could not lie. I sat down with both of them and told them everything I knew. No parent is prepared for this. Their reaction was the opposite. Chloe exploded. She screamed. She cried. She said she never wanted to see her mother again. She threw a picture frame on the floor, locked herself in her room, and spent the whole night without eating. Riley, on the other hand, was silent. She just cried softly, lying on the sofa with her head in my lap. She asked quieter questions, trying to understand how and why. Does she still love us? Are you going to separate from her? And every question was a stab. I tried to answer without conveying my hatred, because I did not want them to carry it, but it was hard to hide the damage. At school, the looks began. The girls came back saying that their classmates were commenting, that even the teachers were acting strange. Chloe almost hit a boy who made fun of the video. The principal called me for a talk, and that is when I realized that the video was not just a personal betrayal. It was a public scandal. Grace and I, for years, were the model couple of the school community. We went to parties, helped at fairs, participated in everything, and now we were the subject of gossip. The shame was constant, as if I were naked every time I went out on the street. I began to distrust even what was most sacred to me. I had 3 DNA tests done, one on myself and on the 2 girls. It was an act of desperation, I know, but my head was so confused that I needed certainty. When the results came back and confirmed that I was their biological father, I cried with relief. I felt dirty for having doubted, but also a victim of such a deep breach of trust that nothing seemed certain. I did not tell the girls anything about the tests. It was my pain, and they did not deserve to carry it anymore. Grace tried to talk to them via text message, but neither wanted to answer. A week later, she showed up at the door. She did not come in. She asked to see her daughters. Chloe refused to come down, but Riley went. The 2 of them talked for about 10 minutes outside. Riley came back with swollen eyes and without saying a word. Then she hugged me and said, "I do not know if I will be able to forgive her now." And I understood. I did not know either. That became our routine, dealing with the rubble of a broken family, trying to pretend some normalcy while everything was still burning inside. What hurts me the most to this day is seeing how much this stole the girls' innocence. They went from being just teenagers to becoming the children of a public betrayal. Chloe started having tantrums and arguing about everything. Riley became more introspective. She avoided going out. She lived on books. I tried to keep the house running. I made dinners. I forced smiles. I went to the school games, but nothing was the same anymore. The atmosphere was one of mourning, as if their mother had died, and in a way, maybe she had. The woman they knew and admired disappeared in that video in Tampa. I am not a violent type of person. I have always been calm, patient, the kind who resolves everything by talking. But there comes a point where pain turns into anger, and anger into wanting to do something stupid. When the video of Grace with Ty went viral, a spiral started inside me that I could not control. It was as if something had been torn out, and what was left was a hole full of hatred. I started to think about things I never imagined. I spent hours stalking Ty, seeing where he lived, where he played basketball, and even what he ate. I became obsessed. One of those early mornings, I went to the house of an acquaintance of mine who had a reputation for solving things. I did not ask much. I just said, "I need protection." He handed me a Taurus caliber .32 pistol with the serial number filed off. He said, "You did not hear that from me." I kept the gun in a box in my closet, and for a while, I felt safe, but I also felt dangerous. I carried it in the car, under the seat. Every time I passed through the neighborhood where Ty was staying, I felt my palms sweat. The anger told me to do something. The court ordered me to go home. There was one particular day, a Tuesday, when I almost made a mistake. I was coming back from work and I saw his car parked at a gas station. He was there, laughing with a friend, as if nothing had happened, as if he had not destroyed a whole family. My body started to tremble. I felt the weight of the gun on the back seat and I stopped. I stood still, watching. My mind screamed, "Go ahead. Make him feel the pain you feel." But I could not get out of the car. I stayed there, crying like a child. I was at rock bottom. That night, I slept with the gun under my pillow. Not because I was going to use it, but because I wanted to remind myself that I was still in control, that I could, but I would not. I started attending a support group in secret, recommended by a friend. Just men dealing with anger, divorce, and betrayal. I felt less alone. I told my story. I cried. I heard that others liked it. I was not the only one who wanted to blow everything up, but I also did not want to be another person who destroyed his own life because of someone who did not deserve my respect. I stopped carrying the gun after a month. I kept it in the back of the closet, locked, and decided never to touch it again. Of course, I was still angry, but I understood that the best revenge would be to live well, raise my daughters, and make my home a place of peace. Grace and Ty had already done enough to break me. I was not going to finish the job for them. In the end, self-control became my only pride. Saying no when everything in me screamed yes was one of the most difficult and important decisions of my entire life. It is strange how these moments, when we almost lose control, say more about who we are than the moments when everything is fine. I was inches away from committing a crime, and nobody would know. Maybe they would not even care. But I would know, and my daughters would know sooner or later. It was thanks to them that I held on. For me too, because as much as Grace destroyed me, I was still the only pillar standing. And I could not be the man who gave up everything for a kiss in a club. That would never define me again. I did not expect to see Tyblas again so soon, much less in the way it happened. It was a Saturday morning, and I had gone for a walk with Howard, my father-in-law or ex-father-in-law, I do not know. The relationship between us became strange after the betrayal, but he still insisted on being there for his granddaughters. We were walking through the neighborhood, as we sometimes did, in silence, breathing the spring air. Then, across the street, we saw Tyblas approaching the community sports court. He had a ball in his hand and headphones in his ears, as if nothing had happened. My heart raced. It was the first time I had seen him live since the video. Instantly, my palms began to sweat, and I felt that animalistic impulse return, the same anger that reminded me of the hidden gun. But this time, something different happened. A car was coming down the street at high speed, honking its horn frantically. Ty was distracted, and the ball slipped from his hands and rolled onto the sidewalk. In an idiotic reflex, he ran after it. It all happened in a matter of seconds. The SUV could not brake in time. The impact was brutal. The sound of the body hitting the windshield resonates in my head to this day. Howard and I ran immediately, but we already knew. His body lay motionless on the asphalt like a broken doll, blood running down the sidewalk, headphones still stuck in his ears. The scene was horrible, but at the same time, there was something silently symbolic about it. The man who destroyed my family died in front of me without me lifting a finger. The gun I had been carrying for weeks was not necessary. The universe, God, karma, call it what you want, found a way. I stood there in shock. I felt no joy or revenge, just emptiness. When the police arrived, I was honest. I told them who I was. I told them I knew him, that I saw everything happen. No one suspected me. No one raised suspicions. The collision was recorded as an accident. The driver, a terrified young man, cried nonstop. Howard held me by the shoulder without saying a word. We returned home without exchanging many phrases. I was silent, but inside my head it was as if there was a storm. I had wished for that man's death, and it came to me, but seeing it actually happen did not bring me peace, just a strange sense of finality. During the following days, Grace sent me desperate messages. They told me what happened. Did you see it? Did he really die? Why me? Why him? I did not answer any of them. Not out of malice, but because I had nothing to say. That death did not change what she did. Tyblas was not a movie villain. He was just a guy who made a selfish decision, like her. But now, he was dead, and she would carry that forever. There was no way to fix anything anymore. It was as if the accident had sealed everything forever. I did not sleep for days, not because I felt guilty, but because I realized I was one step away from being responsible for this. If I had pulled the trigger weeks earlier, my life would have been over. Prison, shame, eternal guilt. Instead, I stood there watching justice be done without my hands. It was a painful lesson about limits. Ty was gone, but the rubble of what he helped destroy was still here, and I still had 2 daughters to take care of. Life did not give me a choice. It simply showed me that moving on was the only way. After Ty's accident, the emotional pressure became unbearable. Grace sought me out more intensely, wanting to talk, to understand, to try to get closer. I still could not look at her without remembering the video, the humiliation, the emptiness. But at the insistence of the girl's school therapist and the lawyer, I agreed to do a few sessions with a professional. It was not an attempt at reconciliation. It was an effort to make sense of the rubble. We went together to the office of Dr. Rachel Olson, a therapist specializing in couples in crisis. The atmosphere was always tense. Grace looked gaunt, thin, and with deep dark circles under her eyes. But for me, none of that was enough. In the first session, Dr. Olson asked what we hoped to achieve there. I was direct. I want to understand how someone who shared her life with me for 16 years destroyed me in 4 days. Grace was silent for almost 2 minutes. When she began to speak, it was as if she vomited choked words. She said that she had been unhappy for years, that I was physically present but emotionally absent, that everything had become routine, and that finding Ty again rekindled something in her. I listened out of respect for the process, but inside I just thought, why did you not say that before betraying me? She tried to justify it, saying that she did not plan it, that it just happened. Ty appeared at an event, they talked, and the next thing you knew, they were already leaving for the night. She said she felt like she was 22 again, that for the first time in years she felt wanted, alive, seen. That with me she was a mother, a wife, part of the house. But that to him, she was just Grace. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her why she did not say anything about this before. Why did you not seek therapy before destroying our family? But I just nodded and let the therapist continue the session. In later sessions, I talked more. I told her how I felt betrayed, ridiculed, destroyed. I said it was not just about sex or public kisses, but about breaking trust, lying, and exposing us. Grace listened and cried. Sometimes she apologized, other times she remained silent. In one of the sessions, she said, "I really loved you, Noah, but I got lost." I replied, "Yes, and in the process, you lost me too." The therapist said that mourning a marriage is similar to mourning a death, and that sometimes the pain of betrayal lasts longer than someone's death. After 4 sessions, I knew there was nothing left to salvage. Not because there was no feeling, but because the damage was irreversible. Grace still insisted she wanted to try. She said she was sorry and would do anything to rebuild, but it was like trying to glue back broken glass. Every time I looked at her, I relived the video, the dance, the kiss, the laugh, and worse, the fact that she chose to do that knowing the risk she was taking. No apology changes that. Her decision killed something inside me that would never come back. In the last session, I said clearly, "I will never trust you again, and without trust, there is no marriage." The therapist nodded. Grace cried, "Me too." Not out of longing or regret, but for everything we were and everything we would no longer be. I left the office with a strange sense of peace. I knew I was making the right decision, even with a broken heart. And at that moment, I finally stopped trying to understand why. Because sometimes, the answer is simpler than we want to accept. Some people just make bad choices, even when they have everything to get it right. Signing the divorce papers was less painful than I imagined. Maybe because, emotionally, the marriage had already ended weeks ago. The legal process was surprisingly fast. We did not fight over alimony, custody, or property. It was as if we were both so exhausted that we just wanted to end this in a practical way. The house stayed with me, as it was mine before the wedding. The daughters also stayed with me, with bi-weekly visits to their mother. Grace moved into a small apartment in Raleigh, less than 4 kilometers away. I thought it would be weird, and it was. The girls reacted with a mixture of relief and sadness. Chloe was thrilled when she found out she would no longer have to share the same roof with her mother. Riley cried. I felt that something important had been broken, although I understood why. I did my best to maintain the routine. Breakfast on weekends, dinner at the table, watching series with them at night. But there was always tension in the air. The divorce, although it was the best option, left a mark on all of us. It was not just the end of a relationship, it was the end of the idea of family we had built. Grace tried to be present, at least at first. During the bi-weekly visits, she would take the girls to do things I had not done before: movies, parks, and even a mini trip to Asheville. She seemed to be trying to compensate, but there was a distance she could no longer cross, especially with Chloe. The girl barely spoke to her. When she returned from the visits, she would come with headphones on and lock herself in her room. Riley, on the other hand, showed signs of reconnecting. Sometimes she would say that her mother seemed sad, that she was trying, and I just listened. I neither criticized nor praised. I just let things take their own course. I also started to try, not serious relationships, but dates. Some friends convinced me to create a profile on apps. I had 2 or 3 weird dates, one more promising, but I still carried an internal wall. I would talk, laugh, but I would not let anyone get too close. It was as if every time someone tried to invade my emotional space, I went back to that video, to that moment. So, I preferred to focus on the girls, on my work, on myself. I started running, went back to studying programming, and invested in an old e-commerce project, things that gave me a sense of control and purpose. Grace did not talk much about Ty's accident, but one day she sent me a text message and said, "I still dream about him dying in front of me." I read it and left it unanswered. I did not know if it was guilt, longing, or regret. Maybe all of them together. The thing is, she seemed broken, not just because of the end of our marriage, but because we bet everything on an illusion that ended tragically. I no longer felt anger, just pity. She was no longer the woman who betrayed me. She was just someone trying to pick up the pieces of her life, just like me. In the end, the divorce was not an end, but a beginning. Not one full of euphoria, like in movies about overcoming adversity, but a new beginning, silent, almost lonely. It was a new chapter written carefully, day by day. The pain did not disappear, but it calmed down. I became more skeptical, more selective, but also stronger, and even with a somewhat numb heart, I knew I was on the right path, because sometimes the only thing harder than leaving someone is continuing to love yourself after that person destroyed you. And I was achieving it, little by little, but I was. The betrayal ended, the divorce ended, the scandal cooled down, but the consequences remained. Nobody talks about it. During the first few weeks, everyone focuses on the shock, the anger, the decisions, but when the silence returns, that is when the hardest part begins. I still woke up at dawn with nightmares, sometimes with the scene from the video, sometimes with Ty being run over again, other times with Grace looking at me and saying she never loved me. I started individual therapy in addition to support groups. It was not about understanding her. It was about relearning to live as myself. My relationship with the girls also changed. It became more intense, more protective, but also more fragile at certain points. I made a point to be present in everything: school meetings, events, lunches, but sometimes I felt they saw me as broken. Chloe was the toughest. She still refused to sleep at her mother's house. I even talked about it with the school principal when they brought up the subject. Riley was sweeter. She tried to reconcile, but she had a constant sadness in her eyes. It was as if they had aged 5 years in a few months. Their childhood was left in the past. Grace, in turn, fell into an emotional hole. A neighbor told me that she hardly left her apartment. She was diagnosed with moderate depression. She stopped working for a while and started taking antidepressants. I was not happy to hear that. In fact, I got a lump in my chest. She destroyed our family. Yes, but she was also the mother of my daughters, someone who was once my everything and now was just a pale portrait of what she once was. The guilt, the regret, the loneliness, whatever it was consuming her, and a part of me was sorry. Sometimes, Riley would ask me to visit her mother outside of the visitation hours. I went. I never stopped. But I made it clear that Chloe did not want to, and that this had to be respected. I did my best to remain neutral, even though I knew that inside I was still bleeding. But it also helped me to focus on myself. I got up early, ran 5 kilometers a day, read books that had accumulated over the years. I went back to cooking, taking care of the plants, allowing myself small pleasures. Peace came in homeopathic doses, but it came, and I clung to it like someone clinging to the last buoy of a shipwreck. Deep down, what impacted me the most was understanding that the betrayal did not start in Tampa. It all started much earlier, in the silence, in the distance, in the forgotten routine. Grace made a big mistake, but we had been failing for years and, like many couples, we just pushed through it. When the opportunity presented itself, she fell, and that does not exonerate her, but it does explain it. 3 factors were the trigger: dissatisfaction, distance, and opportunity. And when these 3 align, any poorly maintained relationship can fall apart. Today I know that. Today I understand that we both failed. But she chose to inflict harm, and that part is hers alone. Today, almost a year later, I am still rebuilding. I have not fallen in love again, yet. I still look with suspicion at anyone who gets too close, but I am not angry anymore either. Living with anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, and I do not want to live intoxicated anymore. I have my daughters, my work, my space. I have my peace, even if it is incomplete. And if someone new ever comes into my life, it will be because I am ready and not because I want to fill the void she left, because that hole has finally started to heal.